I'm going to put you on speakers. Oh, hold on. Can you hear me, Carl? Hello?
1 second. See if you
Folks, I'm sorry, could we,
audio.
folks, I can't hear over
How
the,
about now?
yeah, I got you now. I'm going to put you over to the
Battery, media.
speakerphone here. Stand by. All right, how now? Carl, can you hear me? Technical difficulties, won't stand by. All right, can you hear me, Carl?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. The science is wonderful. All right, and I'm going to put a microphone over here so that,
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Ethics Committee to order. Today is the 19th of September, 2024, and we'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
say again?
Is yours on? As members know, the former chair, Wendy Curry, resigned at the last meeting, and so our first order of business today will be to elect a new chair. Nominations are open. Are there any nominations for chair?
I would like to nominate Luke Drake for chairman.
I second that nomination.
Are there any further nominations? There being none, nominations are closed, and Luke is duly elected without further ado as chair. And the meeting is now yours, sir.
Oh, thank you. All right, so I'll take a point of privilege and use my first moments to thank our previous chairperson. Wendy Curry did a great job of herding us through the early stages of this process when we all came in not knowing what we were going to be doing as far as work and our processes for doing it. And certainly we've had some, I won't say robust debate, but we've had some debate on some points, and that's as it should be. But she did a fine job of moving us through those in a civil manner, and I hope to do the same moving forward. So thank you to Wendy, and without objection, I would like to send a letter as the new chair from the committee saying essentially just that to Wendy.
Motion so moved.
He's doing it without objection, Carl, and nobody is
okay.
objecting.
But I appreciate the sentiment. All right, so let me just find my, this is the last meeting. Here's our agenda for tonight. Okay,
This, Mr. Chairman, the agenda was prepared by Wendy. I did not
Understand.
prepare the agenda.
understand, and having said that, well, since we are a new chair here, Wendy had her style of running meetings. I have a slightly different style. I'm a bit more process-oriented, so we'll be following, although we won't be strictly bound by the rules of Robert's Rules of Order, we will use them as a guideline with the goal of keeping the discussion moving forward efficiently while still allowing for a full and fair hearing of all the issues that come before us. So, having said that, and to Neil's point, we'll move through these agenda items, but we will remain flexible since this was created by the outgoing chair. All right, so I'm going to move down. Election of replacement, yay me. Pledge of Allegiance. Are there any amendments to the agenda from the folks on the board as it exists at the moment?
Yes, there is one member of the audience who wishes to address us, Greg Smith, and it would be nice if that could be done earlier on so he could leave.
On what point, sir?
I have no idea.
Sir?
That would be concern. Greg Smith, Reservoir Drive. That would be concerning the past and possibly ongoing debate regarding the original charter for the Ethics Committee, the opinion by Laura Spector Morgan, and related topics.
Okay, sir, I'm gonna hold off on that conversation in part because the board has already pursued that line on multiple occasions. I did review the video this afternoon of the last meeting, which I was unfortunately not at, but heard that there was a pretty robust follow-on discussion about that there. And so while I appreciate your continued interest in the subject, I think it would be unfair to insert that in tonight's agenda, particularly given that we're a new chair. And to be fairly honest, I'm playing catch-up here. I was not expecting to be in this position tonight. So you'll pardon me, but what I will say is, if at any time yourself or any other folks in town, did we have a public session set into my recollection is that we did not have, and I'm asking the other members of the board here, that we did not have a session for public. So what I would suggest is that if you want to address the board in order for us to maintain, some fairness to anybody who might want to discuss the same subject, that if you would send us something in advance of the meeting so that we could add it to an agenda and publish it.
Right. Just for the record, I did actually request via email probably 3 weeks ago to address the committee tonight.
I see.
And one of the reasons I'm perfectly happy to stand down is you do have all of my commentary and thoughts via email, and you should have that in your files. My purpose tonight was simply to emphasize it. So with that, I will stand down and wish you guys a good meeting.
I appreciate that, and I will review that. I'll be honest, one of the difficulties I've been having is that my email has not been coming through, and I'll be working with the town to get that addressed, but as the chair, that's obviously going to rise in the priorities a little bit. So I appreciate your patience on this, but feel free to reapproach at another time.
Thank you again.
Mr. Chairman, I have another item to add to the agenda.
Sir?
I understand the selectmen are in the process of changing attorneys and have voted to do so, but according to Naomi, the contract has not been formally signed. I would like to suggest that we put the question that we put to the prior attorney to the new attorneys to make sure that the opinion of the prior attorney was correct or incorrect.
All right, so what I'm going to say is that would be appropriate on an agenda before a meeting, but I'm not feeling like this is the time to insert it into this agenda.
Will you do it for the next agenda then?
Certainly. Carl? Carl?
Yes.
Are you in a position, you're taking notes tonight? Are you acting as our secretary this evening?
I can't take
Okay,
notes.
if you can't, that's
right
fine. I
now,
just needed
but
to get
I'm gonna
that clear,
watch
so
the
that's fine.
Channel 6 video and then annotate.
Ma'am?
Carl, what we can do is, it sounds like you were going to annotate. I'll keep notes as well, and we can confer.
Yeah, why don't we do that again? This is an
Thank you.
unusual evening, but if the two of you could take notes as best you can, confer on them, send them, and we'll move that forward. But to be clear, Mr. Kirk is looking to add an agenda item. It's to reconsider the previous discussion, is that?
I'm not sure if that's the correct thing, but the issue is whether we can get a second opinion on the question that we put to the prior attorney.
So just for me to
Understand.
clarify, you're asking for us to consider that as a board, and then the next step would be to bring that in front of the Board of Selectmen for
Yes.
their approval. Okay.
My understanding is that the selectmen plan to do this on many of the issues that the town had an opinion on.
Okay, any other amendments to the agenda? Hearing none. I'm going to move forward to approving the last minutes. So to be clear, I was not at the last meeting. I did review them. And I also, as I said, I watched the video of the meeting today. And so I don't see any objections to as written, but I'll open that up to anyone else. Have any changes to the draft minutes from the August 15th meeting?
I have not seen those, Mr. Chairman. I have trouble accessing email.
Carl?
Yes, I did put George Smith's comments from his email into that first part of the minutes.
I do see
Then
them. Yep.
Wendy wanted to defer on her discussion about his wanting this not implementation part of the code to be brought up by the Ethics Committee and not by, say, George.
Well, understand. I understand, it is Greg, but,
And Greg, sorry.
right,
Greg
so,
Smith.
so that would be dealt with in the agenda item as added for the next meeting. But
Okay.
my real question is, do you have any changes to the
None.
draft?
No changes. No changes to the draft.
I would accept a motion to accept as written. Anyone?
I wasn't here and I haven't seen them, so.
All right,
I'll move to
you move to
accept the
accept?
minutes.
I'll second it for the point of seconding it. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question on the approval of the last minutes as submitted. Aye?
Abstain.
Carl?
What was the question?
The question was whether to accept the draft minutes as
Oh,
written.
yeah, yes.
Excellent.
Accept
All right.
The motion passes 2-0-2.
0-1.
2.
Two abstains.
Oh, two abstains, yeah, they weren't here.
Right, well, neither was I, to be clear, and I do understand the point of abstention on that point, but I think to move this forward, I'd rather get this on the record. If there's objections, we can deal with those later. All right, I'm going to leap ahead under privilege to talk about filling the open vacancy seat here. So I became aware of this very recently, and I also became aware of by obviously having been on the board for this time and from reviewing the last committee meetings that we're very close to engaging in our first process of a hearing, which is both a little frightening but also exactly the purpose that we've convened this committee. So to that end, I took the liberty of reaching out to Suzanne Cowie, who was previously on the board and has been elected by the town. Now, I saw in the discussion, I'll just clarify, I saw in the discussion from the last meeting that there was a point about how long that term would be, and someone had proffered that they thought it would be till the end of the existing term. I do not believe that is the case, and I'll be asking the town for a response on that. I believe what happens is that an appointee in a case like this goes to the next election cycle, which would be this winter's cycle. And that would immediately put the opportunity back before the voters to affirm if that's their own choice for the position. But to get us from now till then, it seems to me that someone who was there during the formation of all of this and has as much knowledge as the rest of us, barring this past 4 or 5 meetings, would be helpful in moving things along. So I will move to elect Suzanne Cowie to the board. Looking for a second?
May I
I'll
raise a
second.
point of order?
Second. We have a second and then discussion. Sir?
While Suzanne would be an excellent choice, don't you think it would be appropriate if the position were, quote, advertised, unquote, so that we could see all of the candidates who might be interested and select from that group, rather than simply giving it to the person who was recently on the committee?
Your point is well taken. And what I'll say is I did consider that when I was thinking about this, and I'll go ahead and put my rationale out there and let the board act as it sees fit. So we're caught in a balance here. It is now September. We have effectively October, November, December, January, February is when our next round of elections is. So we've got 5 meetings, and we've got a hearing that's coming up before us. it seems to me, in the interest of a fair hearing, that having a full board, or as close to a full board as possible, is going to allow anybody to have more of an opportunity to have their points heard before a larger body brings more perspective in. And again, although I am very sensitive to wanting to have the voters act on this, which is why I didn't want to suggest that, as was, I saw on the video last time, that this would be until the next election for that term, which was 3 years. I don't think that's accurate. I think it just goes till the next available opportunity for the voters to vote. So it's a balance call, and I will defer to the will of the board, but it's my position that in the interest of time and in the interest of trying to bring someone up to speed on the processes, there's not really anyone that I can think of that would be better suited, given that they were there for the formation of all these discussions. But again, I am very sensitive to wanting this to be, elected as quickly as possible. But I also would suggest that by bringing someone in who was already voted on by the voters, we're not sort of circumventing another process to have some other of our own getting in the way of that. So that's where I'm at, and that's why I made this motion. Any other discussion from the board?
This
Sir?
is Carl. Naomi had sent an email back about the vacancy. Did you read that?
I did not. I was not, again, I haven't been getting the emails, so I didn't even know that Wendy had stepped down until someone approached me about a week ago. So
Yeah.
that's my
She had
fault. I'm
talked
not
about how
blaming
they
anyone. I'm
filled
just,
vacancies in the past with appointments.
right. And that is true, that they have filled them in the past with appointments, but, and what I'm suggesting that that's what we do, that we appoint someone as a board, and then, but the only difference from my position, Carl, and what was stated in the last meeting, is I don't believe that term extends through 2026. I think the term would end at the next election. Now, it's entirely possible if this moves forward and Suzanne accepts and becomes a member of the committee, she could or may not choose to put her name in at that point, and of course, any other citizen of the town would be able to. But my concern is that, given where we are, especially considering that we're moving into a hearing, it appears, from the minutes from the last meeting, I think it's best that we have experienced folks ready to conduct the town's business on that point. Sir?
I'd like to read from the Ware Ethics Code implementation. This is Part A, subsection 4. Should a vacancy in the committee arise, the remaining members of the Ethics Committee shall elect a town citizen to serve out the remainder of the term. Any tie shall be resolved by vote of the town moderator.
Understand that. I'm sorry, are you finished with that portion?
I think remainder of the term
I
refers to
understand
the
your point.
term of the person
I
who
understand.
resigned.
I understand your point, and what I will say is that we have had quite a significant amount of discussion on the role of the implementation rules/guidelines. We have put that before an attorney, and I do understand it's a sensitive subject, because I do understand that some folks think that we should follow a different process, and that those rules were codified into an ordinance. But I will also say, per the minutes from the last meeting, per the discussion of the last meeting, per the discussion at the meeting before that, that that's not the way the board went with this. We did go to the selectmen. We did approach the town attorney. I know there is some dispute over the quality of the town attorney, but it is not my position as a chair of a committee in town to pass judgment on the legal qualifications of the representation for the town. I don't speak for the town. I speak for this committee. So, having heard that point, what I'll say is, I don't believe that that's binding upon us. I do believe that we can elect a position, and that we can choose to have that position just run until the next next period, because I think that personally is in the best interest of the town. Now, having said that, I'm perfectly willing to have that submitted to the attorney for a judgment call on whether that's inside the field of play or not.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
Even if the former attorney's interpretation is correct, if these are our rules, then don't we have to modify our rules by vote of this committee before any period of time is appropriate for the replacement member?
Well, that's an interesting point, and I think we could certainly go down there for a little bit, but what I'll say is that my recollection of this discussion is that we never voted as a committee, as this body, to accept those rules. We did use them as guidelines, and we certainly used them extensively and quoted them. But if there's a record that reflects that we accepted them and said these are our rules and that we have to vote, and that sort of thing for moving forward, then I'm happy to do that, but I'm not aware of that. So
basically you're saying that we have no rules to guide us, we can do whatever we want.
Actually, that's not what I'm saying, and I'd prefer you not to place words in my mouth, because that's
Then correct
not
me,
what I
please.
said. What I said was that I think in the circumstance at hand, we have the authority to elect a new member to this board for the temporary period from now until the next election cycle in the winter of 2025. And I have put a name forward, so what I'll ask is, hearing your objection to understanding them, are there any other points of discussion on the question?
Yes, this is Carl.
Yes, sir.
Again, if Suzanne did accept the appointment, she could go to February or March and say, I'm done. Say we were forced to the term, she could just go to the end of the session and say, I'm done. And then we have the election. But I like your idea of filling the term, not the term, but filling the session and not the term, and then putting to vote to her replacement, but make sure it's on the right cycle so we don't have 3 board members going at the same time. We want to have 2, 2, 1
All right,
for election.
I think I understand your point, Carl, but let me just restate it so that I'm clear. You're suggesting that we should move forward with the election, however, that it should extend through the normal term, and that if whoever is elected decides not to, that they, don't want to continue into that next cycle, they could step down, and then an election would take place anyway?
No.
Well, I was saying if Suzanne accepted the current appointment,
Let me-
right now
let-
our bylaws say for the term.
Okay.
And I'm saying your idea of having her accept it for the session until winter elections come up, I think is a good avenue,
I
a
see.
good way to go right now.
Okay, so you're, all right, I think I understand.
And, Mr. Chairman, so you're saying that the rules bind us with respect to elections, but not with other things?
No, sir, I didn't say that.
I see.
All right, I'm going to continue the discussion just a little bit more so that we can be clear here, but what I'll say to the board members, and I guess I'd like, wait, and I've heard Carl say that he's amenable to the idea that this would only go until the next election cycle, but also open that if that's not the way it goes, that elected person could step down as they will, as any of us can. And so I'm going to have to put it over to you, ma'am, to see what your position is, because I'm not hard over on either of these.
So I went to the New Hampshire Municipal Association site just to see if there was any guidance or information on what happens when there's a vacancy, and so there is. So the discussion on the NHMA site talks about what happens when someone resigns.
Ethics Committee or Selectmen?
Hang on. And they go through
different
a
laws.
variety of those positions, and it depends. So the reason I'm heading into this is because it depends, right? So, let's see here. Who has the authority to fill vacancies in elected positions? To determine who has the authority to fill a vacancy, look for a statute that relates to the specific position. For most municipal positions, see RSA 669, 61 through 75. For example, RSA 669-63 states that a vacancy on the Board of Selectmen is filled by the remaining members of the board, and if they fail to fill the position, any citizen of the town may petition to the Superior Court to fill the vacancy. In addition to selectmen, there are specific statutes relating to filling vacancies for moderators, supervisors of the checklist, town clerk tax collector, auditor, treasurer, trustee of trust fund, and highway agent. To fill vacancies on the Budget Committee, see RSA 3215, and to fill vacancies on land use boards, planning board, zoning board of adjustment, historic district commission, see RSA 67311, 67312, and if there is no statute relating to a particular position, see RSA 66975, which governs filling vacancies in other offices, including constable, sewer commissioner, assessor, overseer of public welfare, library trustee, and other optional offices where no method of filling vacancies has been provided by town meeting vote. In all of these cases, the statute gives the Board of Selectmen authority to fill the vacancy. To determine who has the authority to fill vacancies in village district positions, see RSA 67012, and full school district positions, see RSA 67133. So what it sounds like to me, not to muddy the waters, but it's a decision about whether or not we believe that we should follow the RSA that says that we hand it over to the Board of Selectmen, or we believe that we should be following the guidelines for implementation. And so it kind of circles back to what's our ruling on that. We had been given an initial ruling, and I wasn't here last meeting, but we had been given an initial ruling by town council. I know that there's been a lot of debate about that. There is discussion on the table as to whether or not we are moving forward with that current ruling or re-examining that ruling. I guess, again, the answer or the question at our, that we need to make tonight is, are we moving forward based on the information that we currently have and making a decision based on that? If we are, then we're deferring to the Board of Selectmen for this vacancy. If we're not, we're picking back up whether or not we're going to implement this set of guidelines, and we're going to seat the person ourselves. And so that's what I make of this discussion. I know that's less than helpful, but that's where
Oh,
I'm
no,
at.
it's very helpful. In fact, I also reviewed those, and your point that the Ethics Committee is not specifically called out in any of them. However, there is a distinction, and it was my inference that the deference to the Select Board was for non-elected positions and vacancies in that capacity where they would be a moving body in the first place. However, in an elected board like this, it was my inference that the committee itself could fill that position. So we're left with a couple of options. We could move forward, fill the position on an interim basis, and ask for counsel to, weigh in if we've, violated something. What I'll say is we're pretty deep into the weeds here on the bits of the law, and my driving interest here is to have a functioning board, and we've got some work to do, and, in my opinion, it needs a fully seated board, or I should say, it doesn't need, that's not the requirement, quorum is the requirement, but that the town would be better served by having a fully seated board and all the perspectives provided by that. However, as I said, I will defer to the will of the committee, and so that still leaves it to us. So on the table is the motion to elect Suzanne Cowie to fill from now until the next election cycle. I would be open to amending that if there's a movement to have that pushed to the term, or we could just vote it down and then introduce a motion to send the question to the select board or to the town council. Sir?
I think there's an inconsistency here which I'd like to bring to the board's attention. On the one hand, we're told by council, and the majority of this committee agree, that the implementation rules are something that was not formally adopted by the town. If that's the case, then there is no authorization by the town as to how we are to deal with replacements. And as Eileen just said, in that case, state law says the Board of Selectmen do it. If in fact we go ahead and make a replacement, aren't we in fact saying that we are bound by the rules, the implementation rules, that previously we said we are not bound by? I don't see how we can have it both ways. I share the chairman's concern that we should have a full board, but here's the problem that I foresee as a possibility. Let's assume that we vote in Suzanne, and let's assume that a case comes before us and we have a 3-2 vote, okay? And it turns out, at some subsequent time, that we were in error tonight in appointing Suzanne. What happens then? We have an individual who was not officially a member of this committee casting the deciding vote. I think that we really need to be very careful to make sure that our membership is complete in the correct way, the legally correct way, so that we don't have the problem that I just indicated at some time in the future.
Thank you.
I know there's a motion on the table, and I'd like to propose another path forward.
Okay, so why don't we do this just to make it clean? I'll withdraw my motion. Carl, will you withdraw your second?
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay, so now the table is bare, and we can move on with a discussion.
All right. I'd like to make a motion that this board recommend Ms. Cowhey to the Board of Selectmen, allowing them the opportunity to also advertise the fact that we have a vacancy, to be heard at their next Board of Selectmen meeting, so that we can expedite the process of filling that seat and meet the current requirement in RSA.
Okay, so the
My,
motion is to
Recommend.
recommend that this board vote to recommend Suzanne Cowie to fill the vacancy on our board.
making that recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. And so let me just stop there, because you said some other things that I think go into the business of the select board, not us.
Yep.
So I wouldn't be comfortable adding that.
Sure.
But I think if that's what we vote, then I would be comfortable with that moving forward. It would at least move this forward so we can hopefully expedite that process. All right, so the motion before us, or?
We have a
wait,
discussion.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to second that motion.
There, that's what I was looking for, is a second. Now we have a second. Now we can have discussion on the motion before us, which is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that Suzanne Cowie be appointed for the remainder of the term, or as they see applies to the law, to the Ethics Committee. Go ahead, Carl.
Okay, so the appointment is for the term that was vacated, correct?
Well, what I would say is I would suggest that we say that we want to appoint, or we're recommending that Suzanne be appointed to fill the vacancy on the Ethics Committee, and let the selectmen determine under the law what that term is.
Okay.
But, Eileen?
For discussion purposes, the next paragraph under what I just read to you. When filling a vacancy, is the position filled for the remainder of the term or just until the next election? The answer to this question depends entirely on the position being filled. Some positions are filled only until the next election, when a new person is elected, regardless of whether or not there is time left in the term. For other positions, a person is appointed to fill the vacancy will serve out the full remainder of the term. For example, under RSA 669-65, if there's a vacancy in the town clerk position, the deputy town clerk shall serve until the next election. However, under RSA 669-73, Vacancies in the office of the trustee of the trust fund are filled to the end of the unexpired term, even if that means going past the next town election. So it will depend, again.
Okay. Discussion, sir?
Yeah. Although I think the attorney's, as you know, the attorney's opinion was in error, that in fact is the opinion that we are working under. And therefore, that being the case, Eileen's motion complies with the situation as it is now and puts the decision in the hands of the selectmen as it should be, assuming that the attorney's position is correct. If in fact, at some future time, that opinion is revised or reversed by some other attorneys, I still think that the selectmen at this time would have had the power to do what they did based on legal counsel. So I think we're safe. And I will be voting in favor of this motion.
Thanks. Any other discussion?
None.
No, sir. All right, well, what I will say at this point is I'll call the question on the motion at hand. All those in favor of voting, and I'll say voting yes means that we will forward Suzanne Cowie's name as a recommendation from the Ethics Committee to the Board of Selectmen to be appointed to fill the vacancy, and that's that.
Further question, I take it the selectmen could choose someone else. We're recommending, it's not.
Yes, that's their choice.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, how say you?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Very good, unanimously, we will send the discussion to the board.
Nice work.
Thank you,
That's fine.
Suzanne, for coming. And you're welcome to stay for the rest of it, I'm sure it'll be informative. Okay, right. That one is taken care of. I will move on to communications. Now, normally at this time, the chair would share any communications they receive between meetings. Unfortunately, being where we are and being what's happened with the email, I haven't received any communications, and I don't yet have access, obviously, to what was provided from the last meeting to this meeting. So I am at a loss on communications, and I don't think it would do justice to the folks who have communicated for me to try and read that here and come to a conclusion or discussion. So what I'm going to do is ask, Carl, did you receive any, I saw in, let me rephrase, in the last meeting on the video, I saw that you had said you had access to the Google Docs website.
Correct.
And that, does this have all of the current communications?
No, it does not.
It does
It had
not.
our directory for our processes and procedures.
Okay.
Code of conduct. Wendy had access to the Ware Ethics Committee mailbox. I
Okay.
did not have access to that.
Okay, well, what I will do then is on the communications matter, without objections, I will lay that on the table until next meeting, and in the interim, I will commit to both reaching out to Wendy to see if I can get any files that she may have remaining, as well as working with the town to get up to speed on the email and get that resolved for all of the members of the committee, since it seems like this is an Achilles heel for us if we can't get our documentations in order before a meeting. It makes us a lot less efficient. So whatever we can do to facilitate making sure everyone has the information they need to act on this committee before the next meeting. So, any objection to that?
No, one more comment.
Sir?
If Wendy did get any communication, she did send it out to the group. When she got Greg Smith's email, she would send it out to all the other 4 members.
Right, and let me clarify, I'm in no way slighting Wendy or her communications. The problem was with some of us not being able to connect to the town's Outlook
Okay.
email system. That's not the town's fault,
Understood.
I'm a bit of a
Understood.
troll in that area. Troll, that's not the right word. What's the word? Old-fashioned, that's the word.
Okay.
All right, so, but I will commit to get that squared away.
So as far as new communications, we don't know the true status of it since we don't have access to that mailbox.
Exactly. I don't know what I don't know. So,
Correct.
well, for me, it's not just the mailbox, but it's also some of the emails that I haven't seen yet, so.
have a mailbox out back that Wendy checked before every meeting.
There's a physical mailbox, okay. All right.
We're about to find out.
Well, there's a mailbox out front.
Yeah, stand by.
Yeah, Naomi's off to get it.
Drum roll, please.
There's nothing in that mailbox.
Okay, so there's nothing in the mailbox, so there's nothing for us to review physically here, but I do believe that there is some catching up on some of these files that I need to do in order to efficiently conduct our business. So my apologies for the delay, but we'll do the best we can to be fully up to speed before the next meeting. Anything else on communications? Hearing nothing. I'm going to move to the existing complaint update. Let me preface this by saying, Carl, I understand that from reviewing the last meeting, that you were going to do some outreach in scheduling,
Correct.
and has that been accomplished?
Yes. I sent you an email before the meeting where I talked about, I had asked for Mr. Fillmore to read out the two complaints at a select board meeting so we'd have full clarity that they have been addressed as far as his complaint. I reviewed the May meeting minutes, and what he had in the complaint wasn't covered in his discussion. So this way we would be clear that he made an effort to resolve it or make them aware of his concern. So Naomi told me he had done so at the September 9th meeting, but I looked and there's still no September 9th meeting minutes. I tried to watch the video and there was one public comment and then they went to the department heads, and I think that Bruce was going to come in later and talk, but I couldn't find that segment. And it was like a 4-hour video. So,
Hold on one moment, Carl.
So-
It was August 26th, I believe.
So-
that goes in.
Naomi's sharing that it was August 26th. One thing I'll say, Naomi, I noticed this from watching the events today, is nobody can hear you on the video, so it's kind of like the Charlie Brown parents in the background. So what I'm going to do until we get that resolved is I'll repeat what you say so that folks out there can hear.
okay.
But, so Carl, just to, again, get my head in order here, when I saw the meeting today, I saw that there were 2 complaints. And correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding from the last meeting was that the committee appeared satisfied on one of them, that the complainant had in fact appropriately approached the Board of Select Persons, and that they were in fact moving to schedule a discussion, what was called the pre-hearing.
Pre-hearing.
But I will also suggest that I strongly agree with Mr. Kirk's comment in the last meeting that that title needs to be changed if what we're doing in fact is not a pre-hearing but more of a scheduling discussion. Because I think if it has the connotations of a hearing, that necessitates a little bit more transparency and public activity. Whereas if what we're doing is meeting with folks to schedule the hearing, that's a different order. So what I took away,
The pre-hearing is a scheduling hearing.
what I took away from that meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on the committee, was that 2 people would sit down for, 2 volunteers, I think is how they were referred to, would sit down and schedule and come up with a schedule whereby, I assume with both parties, whereby we could move forward with the hearing. Am I,
Correct.
okay,
That is correct. That
okay.
the-
And did that
the
happen?
pre-hearing there'd be one with the complainant and the complainee, or whatever, you know.
Right, right.
However there are.
And did that happen with either party?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay,
I think I'll repeat it again. I reviewed the meeting minutes for that May Board of Selectmen public comment, and nothing was said by Mr. Fillmore
I understand.
with regard to that complaint. So you can't go forward with a pre-hearing.
I understand, but let me clarify, Carl. You said this in the last meeting, and my understanding was, again, there were two issues at hand, right? There were two complaints that were brought forward, correct?
That's correct.
One of them, you are accurate in saying that the board in its last discussion suggested that they did not feel that if for lack of a better term, the bar had been met on trying to resolve this directly with the other side. But on the other issue, and forgive me because I don't have them in front of me, the case files to distinguish which is which, but on the other issue, they did in fact think that they were ready to move forward. And Neil just handed me a couple, so I've got them here, but they're both by Mr. Fillmore. So,
Can I weigh in here?
absolutely.
I happen to be present for the meeting that Mr. Fillmore went back in front of the board. He identified,
Could you show me the date of that meeting?
I think it was August,
Second?
26.
26, August 26.
so he identified his complaint to the Board of Selectmen. They acknowledged that he was bringing forward a complaint, and I believe the statement made back to him was, "We understand you made a complaint to the Ethics Committee," and that was all they said about it.
And so that was on the point of addressing the one that was left as an
Yes.
open question last time? Okay, I
Yes.
understand. Understood.
So, from my understanding and my
Okay.
presence there, he did what was asked of him to do.
Okay.
Okay. So now I can set up the pre-hearing or schedule hearing, but
Before you do that,
Oh,
Carl,
Hold on, let me just let him finish his thought, please. Go ahead, Carl, finish your thought.
I said, now that I know that he's addressed addressing the complaint to the Board of Selectmen, now we can set up the pre-hearing schedule.
Well,
Or the-
right, well, what we can do is set up the schedule, and this is where the confusion from the pre-hearing thing was. The pre-hearing was the scheduling of the hearing. We had, so yes, what we'll need to do at this point is I'm going to suggest yourself, and could I get another volunteer from the committee to work with Carl on scheduling?
Yeah.
Eileen,
And
without
we need
objection?
two people total.
Well, that's going
I'm
to,
out of town for 5 weeks.
oh, well, that's going to slow things down, isn't it?
Well, it doesn't have to be me.
Understand, but I was about to anoint you with that, so I think we're gonna have to
Well-
change strategies. All right, so
Started it.
here's what I will say. I have some scheduling issues that are coming up in the first couple of weeks of October, but I have some time between now and then. So if there's no objection from the other members, I'll suggest that Eileen and I attempt to get with both all three sets, I guess, since there's two complaints. We have a pair for the first one and a pair for the second one, or a group for the second one, excuse me, because as I understand it, there's more than one party named in one of the complaints,
I believe one of the complaints has just one party named.
right?
And I think that one was if I'm wrong, please correct me. I think that one we were ready to move forward on.
Right.
We were looking for some more clarification on the complaint that had multiple people named.
Right.
My recommendation would be to start with the one that was pretty straightforward and schedule that one first,
Sure.
and then work to schedule the next one.
So why don't we do this? I agree, we'll work on scheduling the first one, and let's just be clear on which one that is. That's gonna
It's the
be,
May-
Right, I'm just looking at, do we have a number on these forms? Or, all
Well,
right,
there's no number appointed to them, it's just the date,
Right.
the date that the action took place.
okay, could you make a note for our next meeting, whoever's doing so, that I'd like to add to the agenda that we come up with some kind of numbering scheme for these so that we can track them? Right, so so that we're not referring to it by the names of the parties, we can just refer to it as a number.
Yeah, we could do a sequential thing.
Right, and that, it wouldn't be the time right now to enter into that, we have to
Okay.
wait for the next meeting, but we'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting and pick it up then.
Okay,
But in the interim, what we will do is we will, Eileen and I will get together and we'll contact Mr. Fillmore and Mr. Pratt and see if we can work out a schedule for that hearing.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
and
One moment,
a side
Oh,
note,
Carl, hold up just a second. I know you can't see us, but we're getting some notes down, and I want to make sure that we get this accurately before we move forward. And also Neil had his hand up before you jumped in, Carl. So go ahead, Neil.
I'd like to raise an issue about whether Mr. Fillmore has adequately met our standard, which admittedly is somewhat unclear.
As a point of order, was this not addressed in the last meeting? I thought I saw that discussed and that the committee in the last meeting had decided that they were in fact ready to move forward?
Well, then let me, if that's the case, then let me talk about some of the possible consequences. Both of these complaints involve selectmen's votes. Okay? If our requirement that a complainant present some sort of evidence that he or she has tried to resolve this issue prior to coming to the committee, I wonder whether simply providing notice to the Board of Selectmen is adequate. Let me be specific.
To be,
These-
as a point of order, though, Neil, what I'll say is this sounds very similar to what you discussed at the last meeting. Is there a change between your position from the last meeting and now, or are we just recovering that?
Perhaps I've forgotten my position from the last meeting,
Okay.
but let me go ahead, and if I'm repeating myself, please tell me and I'll stop. If you're trying to correct something, you need to do it in a timely manner so that a corrective measure can be taken. If Mr. Fillmore simply went to the selectmen 2 months, 3 months, or whenever it was after the incident and simply notified them that he had a problem with their decision, that's very different from taking action, as I think our rules require, to try to resolve the situation. That would have required Mr. Fillmore to go to the selectmen at their next meeting, ask them if they would move to reconsider the matter, and take a revote with the offending members disqualified in some way. So there was no opportunity for the selectmen to deal with the issue that Mr. Fillmore raised, except so far later that they were not in a position to do it. The people had been appointed, they had attended meetings. There was no, I don't think there was any legitimate procedure by which the selectmen could have undone what they did and Mr. Fillmore complained about. So I'm looking at this as a statement that might give people guidance in the future. Are we really telling folks that if you have a complaint, don't really have to worry about doing anything about it? All you have to do is notify the person you complained of at some distant time in the future, a couple of months here, that you had a problem. And I wonder if that really fulfills the purpose of our requirement that prior to coming to the Ethics Committee, an individual must have made some sort of an effort to resolve the issue. And presumably that means in a timely manner. If I've said that before, I apologize for repeating it.
Well, my recollection is it wasn't verbatim, but it was pretty similar. And as I said, the board did, and I could be wrong on this, and please weigh in, Carl, you were at that last meeting as well. But it was my understanding that the board did consider that and forgive me, I'm forgetting the date, I think it was in June, there was another meeting where Mr. Fillmore went before the board and presented his concerns. I've not reviewed that, but that the board then said that they were ready to move forward with the pre-hearing activities. And that being the case, I'm not hearing anything new that changes that. I hear your concerns, and again, those are, you know, this is our maiden voyage, if you will, so, you know, thing about new recipes is sometimes they don't, you know, there may be work that has to be done, there may be things that we have to correct here, but I think that in the interest of timeliness, scheduling at a reasonable time in the future is, I mean, meetings can be rescheduled if it turns out that, for example, and this is a hypothetical, but let's just take a separate complaint and not use this one as an example, but if a complainant comes forward to a board in the town and says, hey, I have an issue, and they present themselves at a public meeting to say, here's my concern, or I think you did something wrong, then the board has an opportunity to respond to that in one fashion or another, or to choose not to, as is their purview on that board.
I think that's correct when it comes to some kinds of actions.
hello?
I'm sorry, I wasn't finished, sir.
Sorry.
Carl, I was still going on there for a second.
Okay, you broke up, so, I was-
Oh, no, my apologies, did you miss something?
yeah, I was trying to interject about what's written on the ethics code violation complaint form,
Right.
and I guess.
All right, hold on, I'm
What's written on
gonna
there?
call a point of order on you because Neil was trying to interject and you were trying to interject, and I cut off Neil to listen to
Okay.
you, but you're both trying to interject, so I'm gonna, in order to be fair here, I'll let Neil say what he was gonna say, then I'll let you say what you're gonna say, and then I'll finish my
Okay.
thought, and we'll move on hopefully with a,
Your example, Mr. Chairman, was of a situation which could be corrected at a subsequent time. When it comes to appointments, you can't correct them at a subsequent time.
appointments. You're talking about the specifics of the complaint?
Yes.
I see.
And
Okay.
so there's a timely issue here. In some situations, it could be years later that something could be done, an apology made or something for a slight that was done years previously. But you can't do that with appointments. So when it comes to our requirement that an effort be made to resolve the issue before coming to the Ethics Committee, you have to consider the nature of the complaint and the timeliness of resolving it. And in this case, Mr. Fillmore did not give, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Fillmore did not come to the board in a timely manner so that the board could have taken action in light of his complaint.
I
They had no
disagree.
opportunity to do that.
I disagree, because I think if I recall this correctly, there was
So-
hang on, there was a, not a public hearing, but there was public comment where, I believe, Mr. Fillmore expressed his concern with the board
At a time when they could have,
at a time where they could have,
if that's the
I
case.
believe.
Well, we
And
probably
so-
ought to investigate that.
But I also think, you know, short of, you know, what you're suggesting, I think, is that, you know, if somebody has a problem with something, you know, for the way that our Board of Selectmen work, they would have to put themselves on an agenda, and they would have to formally redress the board with whatever concern that they have. So,
Or
if that's the expectation, I think, moving forward, right? Like, if that's our expectation, like, listen, this is what we define as being adequate enough of a attempt, then we need to state that. We need to be clear with people. And as it had been written, you know, as we had directed, that is not what we put out there. And so I think, you know, when I'm looking at refining a process, sure, moving forward, I think in the future, if we want to take a look back at what our process is, but I think as it had been stated, as we went live, that was what we said, and I think we need to stand by that, my 2 cents.
Okay, so where I'm at is I think that the board has dealt with this matter. I think that, in the one case, that the board had discussed whether the actions by the complainant met the requirements of the board to move forward to the next stage. Now, to be clear, the next stage is scheduling. There's plenty of time between now and the time we get to a hearing for this matter to be resolved, and it is my hope and expectation that the parties involved would do that. But I will also say, to the point that Neil raised about actions by a board, I'm not clear that ethics is, in an ethics environment, that a violation of it means, well, that we redo the vote. The question is, should the vote have taken place under the circumstances that it took place under if there were a violation of the ethics rules? That's for me, the discussion that we're moving forward with. In terms of the select board or any other body in this town's business and the way they conduct themselves, that's not my purview. Our purview is the addressing ethics complaints through a process that we've agreed on as a group, not as individuals, and that we move forward by a vote after having discussion of the issue, which did happen. And so it's my position that we will move forward with the scheduling of the discussions. And I will say that for everyone out there, and hopefully the parties involved are all watching, that we have opportunities to resolve this, and it would be to the best interest of all parties to have a resolution to the discussion. And I'm not weighing in on either side, pro or con. I'm just saying that that is the process that we've established. It's how we move forward. And I don't have any idea, all I know about this is what's in front of us here. And the fact, what we have asked for from the individual, and that the board at the last meeting agreed that the individual met those requirements. That being the case, the next step is scheduling. That's all. Now, scheduling is, as I said, we'll move forward to try and get that done in the first instance. In the second instance, I hear that the individual went before the board, and so I think it would be incumbent on us as a body to say, do we believe that the bar has been met similar to the first case? In which case we can move forward with scheduling, or is there more that we need to understand about what happened in that second case?
It doesn't sound to me like the members of this board have enough information to be able to make that decision. I happen to be there, but I think it would behoove everybody to go and look at the recording or go and look at the minutes so that they could make an informed decision about that. That's my-
So I would be comfortable with moving to the next scheduled meeting of this board, a discussion on the process or the next steps in the, and I'll call them, I'm going to go ahead and just number these
1, 2.
right now without objection. I'm going to number the David Pratt as 2024-1. And the one involving Janice Matthews, David Pratt, and Salem Bloom as 2024-2. So we can all be clear about what we're talking about without objection?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These are my copies, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
delighted that you did that.
Well, there you go. Now you get purple ink on them. I'll make a note over here as well. Just so I got this, 2024-1. All right. Did we have a motion? I've lost my place.
So, just for clarification, the action is that you and I are going to work to reach out for scheduling on 2024-1.
-1, it is.
And 2024-2,
We will
we
place
will
on.
defer until.
We will place that discussion on the agenda for the next board, and I will request that all of the board members come to the next meeting prepared to discuss whether they think we're ready to move to the next step with that issue as well.
Could, Mr. Chairman, could you or Eileen tell me which minutes we're supposed to look at to
I
make
believe
this
it was
determination?
August 26th. Yes.
Okay. And that's the only one?
Yes, I believe.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right, Carl, I can't see your hands here, so was there
Yeah.
anything that you wanted to weigh in on?
This has to deal with the discussion that Neil had as far as people issuing complaints and not doing anything to resolve it. On our form, there's three check boxes that were automatically done, but it gave you 3 ideas on resolving your complaint. And one of them was just bringing the matter of the complaint formally before the board or committee involved. And that's what I asked Bruce Fillmore to do, was to go up to the committee and say, here's my complaint. That's all I asked him in the email.
Understand?
Because the meeting minutes in May, if you look at the meeting minutes in May for the date that he spoke.
Which,
at the
which
public,
meeting, which meeting are you referring to, the select board meeting?
On
Or-
the board, the selectmen board
Select board meeting, okay.
dealing with the May complaint, I looked at the meeting minutes, and there was nothing in his public opinion or public comments that had anything to do with the complaint. There was nothing in the complaint discussed in his public comment. And I said, Wendy had said that he had addressed the May complaint with the Selectman Pratt. And you look at the meeting minutes, and there's nothing discussed about his complaint on
Can I ask you, Carl,
number 1.
can I ask you, did you review the video on that meeting or just refer
Yes.
to the minutes, okay?
Yeah.
And there was, in your mind, there was nothing in the discussion either?
Right.
Okay.
And so if you could please watch that, I think I forget- I have to go back and find my notes on what I gave Neil my.
It's all right, I'll find
complaints,
it,
and
I'll find it, it's a select board meeting, there's not that many of them.
But if you listen to the video and read the comments, there was a discussion between a couple of people and the thing, and the Selectman Pratt said something about a comment going between the 2 people, but it had nothing to do with the actual complaint that was filed for May. If you read the complaint, that discussion had nothing to do with the complaint, and I said, how did he address or try to resolve his complaint, and I didn't see it.
Was it, and I'm just trying to remember it, was it in the public, there was a public hearing?
It was, he did a public comment, I think it was June 9th, for the issue that took place back in May. Well, in his letter to us, he said he had addressed it in his public comment, and when I looked at it, it didn't match. I didn't see the complaint covered in this public comment, that's all.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir?
May I-
Yes.
Carl, are you saying that we don't have sufficient evidence to go forward with complaint number 1, Pratt?
That's what I was saying, and I just asked Bruce to just go to a Board of Selectmen, read his 2 complaints formally to them, and then he would meet the check mark for bringing the matter of complaint formally before the board or committee involved. I wasn't asking him to resolve it, because we can't, as townspeople, we can't tell the Board of Selectmen how to resolve their issues. We can just say, hey, we don't think this is right, or you did this wrong. We don't have any authority over their process.
All right, so I'm left in a bit of a quandary here, because, again, I reviewed the minute, or the meeting from the last ethics board meeting I watched today, and it was my understanding from that meeting that the people who were in attendance, and I was not,
Right.
agreed to move forward with the scheduling of this first case that we're now calling 2024-1. Is that not your understanding as well, Carl?
Okay, so here's where it started. Wendy got an email from Mr.
I don't,
saying he had-
really,
I'm trying to tell
let's,
you what
let's
happened.
boil it down, let's boil it
How
down.
we went,
Was there a
Frankly,
vote?
I will tell you how we went forward and say, let's go ahead. Wendy read what Mr. Fillmore had said to us, or, said he did address it. He said, I addressed it in this public comment. So we said, okay, he's addressed it. I just wanted to review to see what was said. All I did I didn't look at that public comment. I took Mr. Fillmore's word in the email. I looked at the public comment, and I looked at the comments, and they didn't match the complaint. That's all. That's all I was saying. And then I just asked Mr. Fillmore just to go up to the board with both complaints and read them out to, the May issue and the June issue.
And
That's all
that-
I asked him to do.
And did that or did that not happen?
Well, I wasn't at the August 26th meeting. I was looking at the September 9th meeting because I thought Naomi said it was the last board meeting that he did the public comment where he read out the complaints. But I have to go look at the August 26th
All right, so
meeting.
here's what I think we're going to do here, folks, is I'm going to review both of those. And I'm also going to review the more carefully the minute or the video from the last meeting to see if there was an actual vote taken. However, I do think we're going to we're going to need to start, I'm learning German and it rearranges the sentences, so I keep throwing verb. Anyway, we're going to need to look at how we move forward here. And one of the questions, I'll put this out for the whole board and for the public here. We put forward a process. It's an imperfect process, I guarantee you. Guarantee it's imperfect. It is a first-time process. It did not have every possible contingency covered in it, which is impossible, but it also had some what we thought were literally checks, open boxes that people could identify, yes, that I did this thing, and therefore we could use that to say that they had made the reasonable effort for us not, that they took the steps to resolve this at the lowest level. I don't see this as a insurmountable problem in short order. But I will say that right now it feels like we should probably defer the scheduling until we as a board vote that we believe that that minimum has been met. Because I'm hearing something different here than I picked up from the meeting minutes that I have in front of me and from reviewing the video today. And since we do have a new chair and several board members were absent last time, I think it will behoove us to be comfortable that we have done the minimums of notifying the people in question of the complaint. Having said that, I will also say that I am not inclined to overly burden members of the town with legal, obstacles to having their issues heard should they, what we're talking about here is a question of ethics and how it applies to the actions of this board. It's an important issue. I don't want anybody to think that we're setting this aside, but I also want to make sure that as we move forward, everyone involved, including all of the citizens in town, have confidence that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we're not, that we're following the processes as we put them forward. I will say to the rest of the board that this is point in case of why we need to look more closely at our processes and make sure that we have a mechanism for adjusting them as we move on that does not require waiting for another election from the town. We've got to be able to conduct business, and we need to be flexible in that. Now, having said that, I will put on the table the previous motion without objection, and we will pick it up at our next meeting, which is, I believe, October 17th. But at that meeting, we will, one, I will be calling for a motion on both of these cases to see if the board is satisfied that we are ready to move forward with the next steps or not. And if we are, I want to expedite scheduling as much as possible, understanding that, you know, we're now getting into the end of the year, and there's a lot of other activities that are pressing on a lot of the people involved. However, in my opinion, you know, deferring the hearing is also, has its detrimental side. So, I want to try and balance the interests of the complainant, the interests of the parties that are that have received the complaint, and the citizens of the town to be aware of what's going on. And what I would suggest to everyone who's tuned in, and hopefully lots of you are, is that you also go back and look at these things, because this is a discussion of the town, it's not a discussion of individuals. And so we all want to have a full, fair, and impartial discussion of what happened if we end up having to take this to a hearing. But I will also say that the purpose, one of the things of the Ethics Committee, and we have this on our agenda tonight, is training and making sure everyone's aware of what the rules are and what it means to adhere to or to step outside of those rules. And these are things that we've been working on as a board to move forward with, and to me, this increases those on our priority list of things to do. So, to be absolutely clear, we will put both of these on the table without objection until the next meeting. And the homework for everyone on the committee is to review those and come prepared to discuss and vote on moving to the next steps of a hearing on 2024-1 and 2024-2. Any last discussion on this?
Yes, I have been trying to send emails to all of you, and it appears that none of you are getting my emails.
This is
Only
exactly the
Wendy.
point. That's exactly the point, and that's what I said at the beginning of this, Carl. I agree with you. We're not getting the Outlook emails from the town. I'm not sure where the problem is, but I'm going to be diligently working to correct that. And in the interim, I'm not very concerned about, so I'll share with folks who may not have been party to our earlier discussions, there was concern about if you're doing government business, town business on your personal computers, that opens you up to some kind of potential review for all of your stuff on your email. So you're supposed, you know, that's why people use official ones. We've had some trouble lining up the town's Outlook email system with the folks on the committee and getting the messages through. So in the interim, Carl, I'm going to work with Naomi, maybe even, are you in tomorrow, Naomi? All right, for a little while, we'll talk. Well, I'll get with you, but we'll work that out. In the meanwhile, if you could send it to the email that I had originally put forward, Carl, you know what I'll do is I'll just text it to you. The email
Okay.
that you can forward all of this information to me. And I heard that Neil has also had a problem. And so Neil, you have access to this other email that you shared with Carl that you don't have access to any email?
When we originally started, before the town came up with its email system, each of us created a separate Ware Ethics mailbox.
Understand.
And I have that, and I check that occasionally. And if Carl were to send me something to that, I would get it and could respond.
All right, so what I'll do is I have that email address as well, and what I will do is I will forward you, Carl, that email address so that you can forward, and here's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to just forward the correspondence without any discussion, okay?
Okay,
So that all you're doing is forwarding correspondence. We're not having a meeting of any kind. We're just all catching up so that we can address this issue. In the interim, I will say that I will get my email problem addressed. Sir, can I count on you to work with the town to get set up with the Outlook? If that's going to be the standard then that we all use, then I think it behooves us all to be on there so that we don't end up with these complications in the future where someone's not getting communications in a timely fashion.
I will certainly work with Naomi.
Excellent. All right. Without objection, I'm going to move on. I'm moving down the list, no pre-hearing status, okay. Web form updates. The check boxes, have they been cleared on the complaint form, Naomi? They have not? And again, from the last minute, thanks for coming, folks. On the last minutes, I saw that, correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy had suggested that we would send a form that would have the ability to check on there. I think she said using Word. And that didn't happen, I'm assuming? Okay. Okay, who has skill with these sorts of things that we could get something that is checkable? Ma'am?
I have access to the Dropbox.
No, that's not what I'm asking, but Naomi's about to say something. Hold on, Carl. We're gonna set up a microphone at your desk.
No, the only thing is, I have some things on the website, but I wasn't given clean copies to put them on, and I don't have a clean copy where I can use the Adobe to make the box. I don't have the clean copies.
Got it. So you, by clean copy, you mean one that is not filled
Yeah,
out?
it says
in any
draft
way?
through the middle, or it's got strike throughs or something like that. I can fix all that, but I need a clean copy, and I believe they were done September of 2023. So what's on the website is all that I had received for clean stuff.
Okay,
So I'm just looking for what's missing, and I can probably take that and put the box to get rid of the check mark.
okay.
I just need the clean, and I think Carl had tried to send me
And-
that.
And Carl, do you have access to the clean copy?
Yeah, I can resend the ethics complaint form to Naomi.
One that doesn't say draft,
my
one that
hotel.
doesn't say draft or doesn't have anything like that
Right.
on it? Okay.
It's the approved one.
Why
It
don't
doesn't
you,
have any-
why don't you copy me on that so that I can see it as well, please?
Yep,
Okay, excellent. And then,
yeah.
So that was the issue, is what's
Okay.
up there is all I had access to.
okay,
And then, like, there's supposed to be some anonymous form and some other forms that I'm missing on the website.
okay. I will review all of our forms. I might call on you, Eileen, because you were
I think
involved in some of
Wendy
that.
had all
Right.
of them, and
I'm gonna
so-
reach out to Wendy.
Yeah, I think it's probably just.
Right. Okay,
I
okay.
I have sent Naomi a bunch of forms that all were pretty much approved by the board before I joined. She has all those, but there was one that had that watermark that said draft on it.
Right.
And I do not have edit capability.
All right, I'll see if I can nail that down, and if necessary, we'll recreate the form and get it on there. This is not insurmountable, but we'll knock that out before our next meeting. Clean copy, and I'm gonna put of all forms, and I'm taking an action of my own to review the website and my records of what those forms were going to be. I may, need assistance. I am not very good with software documents, but we'll talk about it as we go forward. Okay. Moving down the list. Remaining docs online.
Just covered that, yep.
And then Neil, Town Access Email Training, we already covered that. Neil's gonna make every effort, as is, and I will say for the record that it's Neil and Luke that need to get that squared away. New mail, all right, this one we already established, there wasn't any today. Let's see, ongoing discussions, implementations of the COE document. Is there interest in agreeing on implementation and codifying with the voters? If so, would it be the original, amended original, or a newly drafted? This is something that has been discussed multiple occasions, so what I will do is, I will entertain a motion to reopen this discussion if there is one.
Isn't, point of order, wasn't this the discussion that we had at the beginning of the night, that
With
we were-
Greg,
we were waiting till next meeting to talk about it?
right.
Isn't that,
Oh, I apologize, you're absolutely right, point well taken. I wasn't connecting the documents. Again, I wasn't really,
that's why we're all here.
absolutely. All right, so that's already been moved to the next meeting. The next issue is the spring training, and looking at the last minutes of the two meetings, I see that this was waiting on me for some activity, and my last recollection of this was that we had sort of a PowerPoint put together that we had all kicked around. Could the members refresh me as to whether we had approved that?
So not to go back around the same barn, but the concern around the spring training was whether or not the date that was written was the date that we were held to.
Understand.
And so we were waiting for an answer on that. We got an answer on that. We've gone back and forth on whether or not that answer is the right answer, the accurate answer, the answer that we're going with. And so I think that question still goes to our next meeting along with the other discussion,
All right,
I think.
all right. I will offer that as the chair, we're going to exercise a little bit of latitude this meeting because we've had some overlap from the last ones. Moving forward, we're going to have, as I said, a little bit tighter rules of procedure, which are going to be involving a vote, and then it will be out of order to bring up an issue again in a subsequent meeting. I believe Robert's rules require a certain period, but nonetheless, unless there has been a change and the board agrees that there's been a change significant enough to readdress the issue. Because I do not want us in the position of overruling any legal directions that we receive from the town. And I think we are dangerously close. I've heard several references to the quality of legal representation, and I will say that another thing that I will be less tolerant of moving forward is commentary on the performance of other people. There are places for that. This is not it. So if we have a concern, raise it through the process, but we're going to run the discussion a lot more to point so that we can be more efficient and that we don't have to have rehashings of issues continually, because it appears that we're going to have other business before us. So I will also project, if that's the right word, for the next meeting, that when we get to the discussion of the training, I would very much like to come up with sort of a multi-layered approach, something, and I think we touched on this back in May, something that we can roll out immediately to fill an immediate need. In other words, make it available electronically, something that we could publish perhaps in the form of a video. And then, if requested by departments, something more interactive with people. But those are just my thoughts that moving forward, we can get that going. I hope that in our next meeting, we can finally resolve how we're going to, conduct ourselves if we're, how we're going to modify our processes and agree to do so and then accept it. I will say, in my experience, once a board has decided on a matter, we can all have our private disagreements, but what we should be doing is agreeing amongst ourselves that that has been asked and answered, and we move on. Unless, as I said, there's something fundamental that changes that requires a vote to reopen the issue, and then we can take it up again. Otherwise, I think we're going to struggle to get traction on any of these issues. Sir?
So, have you come to some conclusion with respect to the process by which we modify or ignore the rules which the attorney said are not an ordinance adopted by the town, but a series of rules adopted by the committee, which the committee or its successor can change?
My thoughts on that, off the cuff, and again, I'm recently in this position, but my thought would be that we would agree on the process of changing documents if our final determination is that we are entitled, allowed, permitted, whatever the term is, to modify our processes, then we would agree on how we would do that. My proposal would be that there would be a motion to change it, that we would have a discussion, we would vote on it, and then we would move forward.
And no necessity for a public hearing or anything like that?
Well, I mean, it would be part of one of our normal hearings. I do not think there would be a necessity for a public hearing to change them, because again, I don't think they were voted on by the town, and that was the question that was put before
Right.
them.
So at any time, if it's in the agenda, we could change our rules. But until the rules are changed through a formal vote, we are bound by this set of
Well,
rules.
bound
Is that right?
bound is an interesting term. I would suggest that those are, as has been, what I would do is leave it up to the wording of the attorney on what our responsibility is for addressing those.
Did
And I
she
don't
say?
have that. But, yeah, it was addressed in the email, I don't have that in front of me, but it was addressed in the email that I saw to Naomi that said that they were, and I don't want to quote that because somebody will object, and probably rightfully so, because my recollection will be inaccurate. But that is out there. We do have the written words of the attorney. So we'll take a look at that. In the interim, if there's a change,
And despite my disagreement with her position, I agree with you that until that position is changed, the committee should follow it. And that's the advice from our attorney. And I hope in the interim you will, before our next meeting, you will reread that and decide whether or not we can on an ad hoc basis or we have to take formal action to amend those rules.
I will review that.
Thank you.
All right. Are we all set with the spring training? And that looks like we have reached the end of our agenda. I will open it to the committee members for any last thoughts. Hearing none, I will close with a point of privilege of saying thank you for your confidence in putting me here, I think. I will do the best I can. I will be an imperfect man, as I have always been, but hopefully with your assistance, we'll come out with the best decisions we can for the town. Having said that, I will make a motion to close the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, you needn't do that.
Oh, that's right.
You can close the meeting at any time you wish or adjourn it at any time you wish. It's
Thank
your
you.
prerogative.
You are correct. I adjourn the meeting. Good night, everyone.
All right, good night.
Call ended.